Who is ready to talk about cognitive architecture? In the last video that I published, I mentioned that I wasn't going to publish another video for maybe a month or two, maybe a few months, and then I realized that I left something out. And the video that I am presenting today is the video that I was originally going to present, but I decided to go off on a tangent in my previous video just for fun and just to illuminate a few things. But this discussion concerns what is the true insight that you need in order to be able to use what we call AI effectively. I've done videos like this before, and this one is an evolution on what I have established previously and what I have figured out for myself. So what did I figure out? Well, there are reports that are out there now. We have about 3 years of data with the AI, and there are reports that are out there now that show that over the course of a year, 2 years, and 3 years, that the longer you run the AI, the worse it gets at maintaining software code, maintaining documents, maintaining consistency, maintaining quality. So what I wanted to understand was, given the limitations of the AI, what are some steps that we can take to work around those things, right? So one of the pieces of information that I had received about a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, was the observation that when the AI companies release a new model, they come out with ChatGPT 5.3 or 5.4 or Claude Opus 4.6, right? Or Claude Sonnet 4.5. Google Gemini 2.5 versus Google Gemini 3. Whenever they come out with these new models, the new models are said to do better on math than the majority of mathematicians. The AI is able to pass law exams or legal tests better than the majority of lawyers. But these benchmarks that rate the AI, they are not necessarily people's everyday experience. There are many people that find that when they use AI, they get hallucinations, they get inaccuracies, they get answers that are just flat out wrong, or if they start out right, they end up wrong the longer you engage the AI. So this is a document that I put together with the assistance of DeepSeek and Claude. I use both of them. And this document was produced based on my prompts that I put together that looked at a couple of things. One of the things that I engaged the AI or the LLM on very carefully was the fact that many of these AI models that are put out by the AI companies appear to produce results in one shot prompt that gives really good answers. It gives accurate answers, gives more complete results than what most people encounter. So I made an observation. One of the observations is the people that are doing this prompting most commonly are people with PhDs. These are people with extensive research experience. They are patient enough to work through a very detailed and complex prompt. And the knowledge that the PhDs have in total is not something that you can transfer to everyone else. So what is the shortcut? And so I didn't ask for a shortcut. What I did was I worked through a number of questions with Claude and with DeepSeek to understand what is the mindset of a PhD, a AI researcher, what is the mindset of those that are able to produce these great results from these one-shot prompts. And the discussion ran for a couple of hours, and it was very illuminating. One of the things that was observed was that the prompter, the prompt engineer, if you want to call them that, they work through a multi-tiered, multi-step process. Now, the issue with that is you could be given the formula, you could be given the recipe of how to do what the PhDs do, but if you don't understand it, then the amount of distance that you can travel with that formula is going to be much more limited. So, one of the things that I wanted to uncover, my real agenda was, what is the actual thought space of those that work in this way, right? Work with AI prompting in a more sophisticated way, so that we don't end up with ideas and with techniques that don't scale, ideas and techniques that we can't use in a more universal way. What can we actually learn to prepare our minds so that we think in a certain way or think the right ways to produce the right results? So that's why this is called cognitive architecture, right? So today is March 13, and I finalized this document on March 3rd, and I talked about it with a few people, and most people that I talked to about this document, and I've shared this document with, they think that this is a really good idea. And I had some time to think about that, think about the impact of this knowledge that I'm about to share. And that's why I did the video prior to this one, because there is a catch to all of this, but it's not as ominous as it sounds. So this guide is built around a single conviction: the gap between mediocre and masterful interaction with an LLM. It is not based on technology, it's based on thinking, right? And although this document is 63 pages long, or somewhere in that ballpark, 61 pages long, I'm not going through every single page. I'm going to give the summary of what we're looking at here. But you will see each page, and you can pause if you need to read certain things. But the summary here is that the ability to get the best result from AI is based on the quality of your thinking. How well do you think? The AI is a reflection of you. When the AI responds a certain way, it's really responding based off of how you have encoded it, how you have engaged it, how you have presented yourself, and it's going to mirror that on some level. So if we can change the way we think, change the direction of our thinking and the quality of our thinking, then we can get higher quality results from the AI, whether it's with software code, engineering, architecture, documents in general, legal understanding, though you can never replace a lawyer, understanding healthcare aspects, though you can never replace a doctor, and so on and so forth. So thinking problems are best solved by equipping the mind with the right structures before asking it to perform. So implied in all of this is patience, but you got to have the right preparation. So this guide, and I'm still deciding if I'm going to publish this guide on my blog. I haven't decided that yet, but this guide is organized into 4 tiers. The first tier is about philosophy, right? So we want to understand the actual mental concepts, the actual ideas from as far back as 2,500 years ago, all the way to basically 70 years ago, in terms of the philosophers that influenced the way that AI came about and came to be. And then tier 2 is like all the books that you could read, all the different books and web articles that you could read that would actually help you shape your mind in a way that would make your thinking more impactful and more powerful when working with AI. So then tier 3 is where most people will be, where people will have the most interest in communication architecture. What are the principles that we can translate into consistent operational habits, right? And so how to have a dialogue with AI in a professional and structured way. And then tier 4 is really ready to go recipes that take the concepts from tier 3 and show you by example what it actually looks like. Okay, so the discipline, the key word there is discipline. Discipline implies patience. The discipline of formulating a precise, structured request forces you to clarify your own thinking before externalizing it. This inversion, understanding that you are the system being improved, is the foundation of everything that follows. So, here's the nature of the problem and why prompting is a thinking problem. The conventional framing of prompt engineering positions it as a communication challenge. How do I transmit my intent or ideas to the model more clearly? This framing is partially correct but fundamentally incomplete. It locates the problem in the interface between you and the AI, basically your words, right? So it's not so much about your words, it's about the nature of what you're communicating, the essence of it, but also the structure. There is a flow that you have to see in order to get better results. So when you try to explain something to someone and you haven't really thought through it yourself, or you understand it all in your head, right, to an extent, but when you try to explain it to someone, it's like you end up with stutters or pauses, or you have to just slow down because you realize it's not making sense all the way through. And so sometimes when you have to express yourself to someone else, or in this case to a AI, then the act of having to engage with the AI is going to help you broaden out, expand, and create more fine detail in what it is you're trying to express. Sometimes, right? It depends on how you go about it. And that's what this document is going to show you. So here's what we're going to look is that research shows that frontier LLMs, or the brand new AI models that come out, they're tested with expert crafted single turn prompts that dramatically outperform those same models under the real world in multi-turn conversational use. Multi-turn means back and forth, right? You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. You ask another question, it gives you, and so on and so forth, right? When they do these tests on the AI models, in many cases, they don't do that. What they end up doing is it's just one shot. It either works once or it don't. So that's where I want to drop the first big piece of advice. When your conversation with the AI starts going in a unproductive direction, when you start seeing problems, errors, things that just don't look right or work right, that's when you need to stop. Because if you keep going in that conversation, then the mistakes that the AI has made becomes part of the stream. And it can never regain the quality because it has corruption and pollution in that conversation stream. So that's where that's one of the big things that we want to do. So here are some of the problems that we have when trying to interact with AI. The prompt does not have good quality. It's too generic. What we are asking is too generic. We've done it in too generic of a way. We don't have the right structure. We're missing all the right context pieces. The conversation architecture is not where it needs to be. We are taking the errors in the conversation, and it just keeps, going forward into the conversation. The conversation becomes polluted. There is no clarity. There's no strong clarity. It's not real clear. It's not real sharp. The conversation that you are having with the AI. You don't know yet precisely what you want to say or how to express it. So some of the solutions to this, right? We have a couple of solutions, and they call it prompt engineering, but basically you have templates, rules, and formatting discipline. And that's just surface level stuff, right? Real easy, but that doesn't really allow you to take charge of this interaction. Where you start to take charge of this interaction is where you design that whole interaction. It's like Sun Tzu in The Art of War. Know that the battle is won before the battle actually takes place. It's the same way with this having a discussion with the AI, is that you have to know how this conversation should go. And then, so new session protocol means start a new session, start over. When it stops working right, start over, because you're wasting your time trying to correct the AI in a conversation. When it starts going in a negative direction or in a undesirable direction, then that's when you have to take a step back and say, oh, there is something I said that threw this off. There is something that I said that threw this off. And that's where we start to refine our thinking. Context management, right? So that's how you set things up in the overall conversation. And follow-up discipline. What are the right ways to follow up with the AI? And then when we get to the foundation, philosophical calibration, building the mental models that generate clear intent automatically. This is going to become very clear in this discussion, and it's actually step number one in how we actually communicate with the AI. So if you wanted to pause the video, this is going to show you how things actually take a undesirable turn with the AI, and what are all the issues that happen that make the AI more inaccurate, right? Less accurate. See, the AI is always going, unless you tell it not to, by default, the AI is always going to be grammatically correct, confident, right? It could be totally wrong and sound like it's totally right because it's using proper grammar at the right language level, and it's doing it in a way where everything seems to flow together. So this is the fluency mask, right? And you got to be able to detect that or have techniques to be able to bring that out. So outputs that sound authoritative are accepted without any scrutiny. Expert practitioners treat fluent sounding responses with more suspicion, not less, precisely because the model cannot signal its own uncertainty through tone alone. See, when you're talking to a person, sometimes you can pick up that they're not really sure about what they're saying, even if they're saying it right, because the tone drops, the tone shifts, right? You don't have that with the AI. And even if they could program that verbal sound into the AI, it still wouldn't work, because at its core, the AI is universally confident in what it says, right? So here's what we have in terms of getting towards getting the AI to respond more correctly, right? So this talks about calibration and updates and how some of our techniques that worked in the past may not work in the future. And so we will actually move through this, because this is not really core to what we're looking at. This is more for those that want to like turn this whole thing into a system, right? This is where you start looking at, okay, these are some of the tests that I need to do over time to make sure that we are staying on the right track in terms of our own prompt approach. And what I'm showing in this discussion is a meta level, right? And which will help define the more concrete ways of prompting. And so you got your calibration prompts where you have a prompt that kind of gives you an insight. Okay, is this AI on the level? Is this entire session going to actually go the way I had planned? Right? So it's a test prompt. The prompting before you actually do your real prompting. And then keeping records of all of that, right? And this is my favorite. I use this one a lot. Multi-model triangulation. I've been doing this one for a good while, so well over a year or two. I love doing this one. This is kind of my go-to. It's not foolproof, but it's basically taking your prompts and using the same prompt on multiple different AIs and seeing how it shakes out, and then using that to change it, and then just rotating through them. That takes more time, so I don't do it all the time. But when I really need to dig in and get more detail out and get things really validated, that's how we went from a 40-page document to a 61-page document in this case. Because I was bouncing back and forth between DeepSeek and Claude Pro to have each one find errors in what the other was doing. This talks about doing prompting if you're part of a team, right? But if you're an individual, this may or may not be as valid, right? But this is where it's really important, right? So one of the major ideas in this document is that the philosopher Aristotle set up the intellectual foundations for what we now call prompt engineering. And you have a way of working through a conversation for getting answers versus working through a conversation in a way for persuasion, where you're trying to either convince yourself or have the AI convince you or have the AI build something to convince others, right? The problem with persuasion, or the danger of persuasion, is that it can lead to self-deception. And so if you're not careful with your prompt, you can prompt in subtle ways where you're actually deceiving yourself. And so what I'm going to show later on is going to show you the basic framework to rein in self-deception and inaccuracy. So this is where we're going to start leading into that first part I was talking about, where it talked about the leading role assignment. Here's where you might say, AI, you are an advisor who believes in our mission, instead of saying you are a critical evaluator. See, if you go this way, it's going to tell you what you want to hear, right? There may be some cases where that's valid. But in many cases, you want accuracy. You want things that are truthful. You want things that can be verified. So you don't want to have an advisor that believes in your mission. You want someone that's going to pick out the flaws, pick out the issues, so that you can come up with something that's more solid, crystal clear. Selective context, where you provide evidence that supports your conclusions, where you don't really give the full picture to the AI. Maybe you know all the different pieces you should have, but you're just going to hold some things back, right? So then you're asking it, okay, how can we make this plan succeed? What are the conditions under which this plan, instead of saying, what are the conditions under which this plan fails? And then, of course, putting emotion into this. This project is critical to the company's survival, to the survival of the team, blah, 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 right? Well, you're going to basically prompt the AI so that any candid response, or, what you call hard truths, well, it's not going to do that. And, that could cause you some issues there. So you can have prompts that work in your favor and prompts that work against, where the prompt is basically taking on the role of, where the AI is taking on the role of the devil's advocate, the one that's going to look for all the problems. right? You're right. You're setting up an adversary so that you can find the issues before somebody else does, right? Which will better prepare you. And then this is where we start to get into the philosophies. Some of the philosophies besides Aristotle. One of the ones is where we look at constructivism, right? How you can use constructivism, the philosophy, in a way to steer the AI. And I'm going to talk through this on a number of levels. So first, the idea is that this is a cybernetic computer system, the AI, that you're dealing with, right? And then what you see is that you're building models, right? You're not trying to discover the entire world. You're trying to form a model of the world, right? What does the world really look like? And that world could be the world of logistics. It could be the world of marketing. It could be the world of mathematics. It could be the world of sports, football, basketball, soccer. It could be whatever world that you're trying to have the AI help you better understand. What do you presently understand about that world? Or what can the AI help you understand about that world? But whatever the case may be, you are building a model, right? And so those models are reliable, right? To the extent that they allow you to function the right way. Not to the extent that they accurately mirror some mind-independent reality. And this is where I have to go on a slight tangent. So, there are both philosophies, spiritual and religious points of view that there is an independent reality. And for some people, the idea of having a subjective reality, one where you are in this reality and only this reality, and or you are through quantum observation or other means actively creating this reality every single moment of time. And there are some theories and models that say that with the computer systems, you can build computer system results or results from a computer system more effectively if you think in terms of a more strict and narrowly defined model that it can calculate on. The more broader concept of an independent reality that's either spiritual, quantum physical, metaphysical, is outside of the ability of the computer software to grasp. So, constructivism, where you're constructing models that the AI can digest, is going to be more effective than trying to bring a range of holistic, metaphysical, broad philosophical concepts into a AI session. You can do that, and you will get a response. There is no accounting for the response being accurate, valid, truthful, or even truly aligned with those philosophies that you have. So that's kind of the big picture there. So when we think about computers, whether it's software code or apps or just the machines themselves, we often think about a sender transmitting a message to a receiver who then sends back a response. And this is a useful simplification, but they say it fails in an AI context. When you prompt an AI, you're not transmitting meaning. It does not understand the meaning of anything. You're transmitting tokens. You're transmitting numbers, a numeric sequence. So your words that you type gets converted to numerical sequences that it then uses to search its own database, like you are in geometry class, right? Where you have an x, y, you have a y, x coordinate system, right? and you're moving up that graph just like this, right? That's how the AI searches for stuff. And your words, it's about how your pieces of your words converted to numbers relate to points on that graph. The model constructs meaning from those tokens based on its training distribution. So what it's trained on, if it's not in the training database for the AI, it does not exist for the AI. The same prompt can yield different outputs across sessions because each time you prompt it, even with the exact same prompt, it's reconstructing each time. And there's some randomness in there based on how many users are on the AI system at the same time, how much CPU, how much processor, RAM, and storage is being accessed, and some of the micro delays to that. All of that factors in. So this is not just a straight database retrieval, like with our regular apps where, you got a document in there. If you know the name of that document and you press the go button, your document comes back up. The AI doesn't do it like that. It's calculating the answer each time. This explains why clarity of intent matters more than cleverness of phrasing. That cleverness will work against you. You are not writing a clever message. You are providing optimal conditions for a construction process you cannot directly control. But what we are going to see is we're going to have a prompt structure that's going to get us a better quality result, not an exact result. 3. Constructivist insights govern expert prompting. Viability over truth. Stop asking whether the prompt is correct and start asking whether it reliably produces the output you need. And also, whether it best reflects the way you're thinking about this problem or thinking about this question. Because sometimes we write a prompt and we just write up until the point that we're finished writing. Maybe we don't want to write anymore. Maybe our minds can't express any more words. So you have to really understand that and see how much work you might need to do in order to make that prompt better. The proof is in the outcome, the quality of the results. A prompt that works is a good prompt regardless of how elegant it is. In a lot of cases, elegance can work against you. The observer is constitutive. Your mental state, what you assume about the world, and your word choices are not separate from the AI's output. They shape it. Confusion in the prompt produces confusion in the response. You cannot stand outside the interaction and observe it objectively. Mental models, not rules. Constructivism suggests building an accurate internal model of how the AI constructs responses and refining that model through experience. Rules are proxies for mental models, so you don't really need rules, right? Except maybe to start out. But once you get really good at this, then you can go beyond the rules. Pragmatism, right, holds that the meaning of the idea lies in its practical consequences. A belief is true if it works reliably in experience. A much younger version of me would not believe in that idea at all. I would totally reject it, debate it, and refute it outright. The version of me that has gone through time does see some value in that point of view, but not all the way. I think there are some instances where the meaning of an idea goes beyond its practical consequences. So, but again, in the context of this discussion, we're looking at those ideas that can be executed, that can be tangibly accessed by an AI. And when we say AI, we say a computer program. The computer program needs to be able to access that data in a way that it can translate into actions. So some ideas cannot be translated into actions in a way that is useful in an AI discussion. So you got to know the difference between those ideas that are special or meaningful just to humans and those ideas that can be translated into technology, processes, operations, procedures, end results, paintings, drawings, code, manuals, and that sort of thing. Music. Ideas are instruments for coping with reality, not mirrors of it. But Be careful with that phrasing, because it's your mind that is mirrored by AI. Consider what effects which might conceivably have practical bearings. And so I think we get the gist of that, right? And so second order cybernetics, you are inside the system and you are the system. I think that is pretty self-explanatory there, right? So your interaction with the AI is a mirror. It's a mirror of you, right? So, and then we get Wittgenstein, right? And this is where we talk about language games. And this is where it starts to get really important. So, you have to, this is the part that I struggled with, because I don't really believe in this, but I am actually embracing it at the same time. Okay? Because I think that you can take this concept too far, is where my own caution is. You can take this concept way too far, and the idea is that you are setting up a game. You're setting up a situation for a person. So you're saying, oh, hey, you are a pro athlete. That's what you are. And by saying that you are a pro athlete, then you will think about things the way a pro athlete thinks about them. You are a top-notch 10x software engineer. There are many software engineers that will balk at that. But basically, you're coming up with an identity for the AI in the conversation. You are conferring identity, right? And as living beings, from a metaphysical and philosophical standpoint, there is the thought that we are independent of identity. In actuality, we can transcend identity. But in using this AI tool, identity is very much the way it is encoded, because the training material that it's been built on is built on identities. So the meaning of a word is its use in language. Meaning is not intrinsic to words. Now, we know that's not entirely true, but when we're talking about the conversation with the AI, we want to utilize the way that it finds, the way it is able to define words. Words have a very specific definition in a computer system, right? We can use slang. We can use a twist of a phrase. We can make up words. That's not the world of AI. It's based off of the dictionary when we talk in the thesaurus when we're talking about what words mean. So you have to keep that clear when working with it. And then we got to come up with these roles, right? And so this one was my own personal pursuit, unconscious competence, where you're able to operate at an expert level without thinking about it, which is a double-edged sword. You can become such an expert at an automatic level that you don't look like an expert to people that either are experts but still versed in the terminology and vocabulary of the field, because some people can become experts in areas where they can just do a thing and it seems intuitive. It's become encoded in the person, the expertise. But now they have become so one with that expertise, they can no longer express that expertise in the language of the field in which they operate. So it's like you know how to do a craft, or know how to do a process, or know how to do a business approach in a very high level of capability. But if you read about those things in a textbook, and then people hear you talk about it, it doesn't match up. Yes, you can do it, but you can't explain it. You can't explain it the way it would be explained in a textbook. You can't even use the words right. So that's where you end up with this concept of ready to hand, right? Where it's like things just become so automatic to you. And so the whole idea with this document is to develop yourself in a way where if you're going to use this AI, you're able to use it in a way, in an expert way, where you're not even thinking about all these things that I'm talking about right now, right? They become automatic. But when the tool doesn't work right, let's say the hammer breaks, then it's no longer ready to hand, right? It's present at hand. You're now aware of the tool, right? You have all this expertise, but the processors are not working today for some reason. It's all messed up. You're like, whoa, what's going on? So now everything's present at hand. It's, nothing's ready to hand. So that's what it is about internalizing what we're talking about here. And we can skip through these stances and look at the intentional stance, which is you need to come up with beliefs, desires, and rational agency, right, for the AI. And it is important to point out that this is not anthropomorphization, right? Or what others would say, anthropomorphize the tools. And what does anthropomorphic mean? It's basically where you say something that you say that, oh, this computer mouse has a personality. Every time I end up on this web page and I try to click, there's no other explanation, but this mouse just won't do right. And so you give personality to things that are made by people, like computers and computer programs, like AI. And as I said in my previous video, I believe there was a research study from the University of Edinburgh in the UK where they found that computer science students that were inclined towards anthropomorphization were much more likely to fail computer science, because you cannot accurately and effectively build logical and rational computer models such as computer code, where you are stumbling over the process, right? Where you're stumbling over the process of doing that. And when you do that, basically, if you say that I wrote some computer code, and when you compile it into a program and you say, well, that compiler just isn't acting right. That's magical thinking, as they would say. You're saying that compiler ain't acting right. So you have transferred blame to an external tool without rigorously and thoroughly investigating, are you at fault? What were these mistakes you made that may be unclear at the moment that created the error when the code gets compiled? Yes, compilers can fail. They do fail in different ways, but compilers have been made for over 40 years now, and their level of error is far less than the error of somebody that's building code that uses a compiler. So that's one of the issues that was seen in the sciences and in STEM. When you anthropomorphize, you walk down that road of significant error that you generate, because you are implanting personality on your computer systems. However, when we talk about language games, we say, hey, AI, I need you to be a star athlete so that I can get the best understanding of, sport, a particular sports technique. Well, they say this whole thing is not anthropomorphization, but I do think that there's some element of that there. It's just that the difference here is that you're very careful with the role playing, right? You're very careful that you're not totally bought into the role playing. You're not believing the role playing yourself. You're constructing a role for the purposes of getting a better answer. So this part goes into the whole idea of prompt engineering at different levels, related to Aristotle's concepts of rhetoric, and it's very useful, right? And this also goes into different mental models that we could explore. But I want to move us ahead a little bit. So this is all the reading, because I want to get us to the actual framework itself, right? So these are all the books you can read and all the web articles you can read, and it's all great stuff. So it's like I say, I want an extensive curriculum for being able to improve thought, right? With some caveats, right? Okay, so and these are the web resources. And then these are the different notes that you can take. And I'm going to touch on some of that when I talk about these. This is it. So, RTCFGC framework. And I've tested this and it works remarkably well. Remarkably well. I know I'm emphasizing and emoting a little bit there. But it works remarkably well. And some of you who interview for jobs, whether at the federal level or for certain companies, are familiar with the STAR format, STAR, situation, task, action, result, right? This is very similar. This is more in depth than that. And this produces better results, higher quality results from an AI. And this is a meta level. Like I have earlier videos where I have a system instruction you can put in an AI and it will help you get clearer answers and that sort of thing. This is one that you can use with AIs that don't allow that, and across all the AIs. It works very consistently. So why does it work so well? Number one is you set up the role. So here you're telling the AI what it is. What role is it going to take on? And this allows it to quickly zero in on the type of knowledge it needs to access. So there's less guessing. It makes the AI more efficient. It makes it go through the process of discovery in a more direct and specific way. And this is one of the ways that you improve your results. So something I may have skimmed over earlier is that when you're prompting in a multi-turn conversation, the AI is going to remember the first thing you said and the last thing you said. The middle part, it's going to be weak on, right? So the role is very important. And then next to it is the context. You have to give it the background. Now here's what's funny about the context. See, and here's another funny thing is I used to talk like this in person probably 20 years ago, up until about, I'd say 5 years, maybe 8 years ago, somewhere between 5 and 8 years ago. I used to talk like this, especially with context. And people used to tell me all the time, I don't need the background. I don't need the context. They tell me that all the time. Just get to the point. And it's a reasonable request among humans. But AI needs the background. So this is something that I am pleased to bring back into play, because this was a very substantial aspect of the way I would communicate in the past. So, essential background, relevant constraints, what has already been decided, what is known, right? Now, you can take this too far by having too much detail that the AI gets lost in it. Or you can have too little where it still has to guess a lot more, right? But the context is very important. And the context is what sets up the task. What does it need to do? Now, the advice is to have your AI session focused on one task. I will admit that I do multiple tasks and I string them together, but I string them together in a way where they're logically connected and they don't have conflicts or contradictions with each other most of the time. So their task is where you want to, and keep in mind, this column here It's the common mistakes that are made, right? So you want it clear. You want it clear, no guessing. The AI should not have to guess what you're saying. In sales, they say use them open-ended questions. Well, when you're talking to the AI, do not use open-ended questions. It does not work that way. It works best with very closed-ended discussion, closed remarks. Only use open-ended questions and open-ended phrasing when you're trying to brainstorm with the AI. You're trying to get it to blossom out, right? But that's the thing, is be very clear and specific. The format, what should the output look like? Don't just ask it a question and just be like, man, I didn't like the way it output that, whether it's bullets, a table, or whatever. You tell it each time, this is what we need to do. But funny thing about it is, the way you have it output has a relationship to the role, to the context, to the task, right? And it can actually enhance the way the AI is going to go about the business of calculating everything and producing a result. The goal, right? Now you're towards the end of the prompt. So you can actually do all of this in one prompt, or you can split this up into multiple prompts. Most of the time, I do this all in one prompt. And I know that it's going to really zero in on this and this. It's going to be like, oh yeah, this is what we need to do, right? But if you did this well, then this logically, this effortlessly flows into that. But then the goal, what is the ultimate purpose? Sometimes task is confused with goal. This is what I need you to do. This is why I need you to do it, right? This is the goal. This is why we need to do it. And that definitely helps the AI produce a quality result, because you have a reason why you asked it to respond to you. And then this is, I don't want to overstate this, but I have to put some huge emphasis on this. This right here, constraints, is the most important thing that you will do outside of the role. The constraints is the most important thing that you will do in prompting. The AI, just like people, respond well to what you should not do, what you must avoid, what you've got to watch out for. If you do this part really well, you will dramatically lower your disappointments. And this talks about the lost in the middle effect that I was talking about earlier, right? So chain of thought is where you have it walk step by step, and you can ask that during the conversation, right? And so that's where I'm going to show that later. But here is the verification hierarchy. This is the way that you can validate what the AI has produced is correct. The highest reliability in verification is another human being who is an expert, right? And then the next level is where you have the AI cite its sources and use its reasoning and calculation abilities to verify that the sources are valid and so on, right? But it can still fall apart in small cracks, in small ways with this. But most of the time, if you do this right, and you phrase this right, then it's going to very reliably verify that what it has produced is correct. Cross-model triangulation. This is my favorite. So I do some of this. but I really like doing this, right? And this takes longer than these, depending. Well, this could take even longer depending on how accessible that person is. But this can take you a good 30 minutes to an hour almost every time. There's almost no quick way to do this, right? For something that's important, right? The idea here is that we're talking about things that are important. And so let's see, internal consistency testing, right? And this is where you're really going all headspace into the AI, and you're able to pose the same prompt in different ways and see if you get the same results. But this can be very low on the totem pole in terms of how valid, how well it's going to validate what you're getting from it. And then adversarial interrogation. I do a little bit of this, not a lot, because this takes quite a bit of time as well. So there's some time aspects to this, right? Where you got to decide, okay, I'm doing something with the AI, and it's important that it be accurate, or maybe not 100%. Maybe you're just trying to explore something, and you just want some kind of answer to get you in the ballpark. Maybe you're going to do your own research, and it can kind of point you in the general direction, but not give you the specific answer. So this is one of the techniques that you can use to make sure that, oh, well, I do want to make sure it's not sending me on a total wild goose chase or wasting my time, right? So that's how you can do that, right? Now, here's the thing. This particular breakdown of RTCFGC gives you some of the things that you want to consider. Multimodal refers to things like video, music, right? Those kinds of things, right? Excel spreadsheets and blah, blah, blah. Whereas here, it's just text, right? Where majority of us are at this time, right? So these gives you some insights about that. And then this helps you work through step by step. I use this particular approach when it comes to things like software code. I found this to be extremely valuable. I haven't used this in a while for software code. The last time that I've used AI for software code is December of last year. Since that time, I've been writing code by hand. But when I do use AI again for software coding, this is what I last used. And I didn't prompt the AI for this. It just brought this out based off of the overall conversation. And so what we end up with is a step-by-step approach to verify the step that we're on before we go to the next step, right? So before we go to the next step, we need to make sure that the output from the step we're on is correct. And when writing software code, one of the ways you do that is you run the code. You compile it if you need to compile it. You know, if it's JavaScript, maybe you're not compiling it. But if you have to compile a code, does the code compile? Or if you don't compile it, is there a runtime error? In either case, what are the errors you're getting back? And you got to resolve all errors. And it's not just about test-driven development, right? You have to make sure that the output, that the interactions between system components is rock solid and trustworthy. And only then, when you know that, have you then verified and validated that the output is correct, and then you have the trust necessary to move on to the next step. Now, let me make a caveat. Let me say something here. In December of 2025, I successfully had the AI convert a moderately complex program that I built by hand to a different technology framework. I didn't start my session over because there was too much going on to do that, right? And I did not know completely about that approach. I knew somewhat about that approach. I've used it in other things. But in this particular case, I had a very long running chat session with DeepSeek. And it was this approach right here that saved my bacon. If I hadn't used this, I would have had to give it up and just gone a whole different route. So it's very important. Writing style, structure, and depth, right? So here is the key pieces. Be very clear and be very commanding with the AI. Don't use weaselly language. wishy-washy language. Well, no, well, it would be nice. Don't do that. Don't do any of that. When it comes to the AI, be very precise, on point with what you're saying. That goes back to having clarity in your thinking. Stream of consciousness, which I am very inclined towards in my own little personal writings. If you look at some of my blog posts, it's very obvious, stream of consciousness. And so anyway, don't give the AI stream of consciousness. It can't work with it in a way that's going to produce reliable, accurate results. If you're going to do stream of consciousness, do it in Microsoft Word or LibreOffice Writer or Apple Pages or wherever, or a text editor. Write all that stuff out. Just go at it, and then say, oh, what did I write? And then go and start cleaning it up, structuring it if there's something in there where you need to present it to the AI. And one of the things you can do with stream of consciousness is have one of the AIs clean it up for you. And then say, do you agree with that cleanup? Maybe it left off something important. And then work on that and refine it until you now can convert that to RTCFGC, right? So that's how you do that. Now, this shows you some shortcuts. Sometimes you don't want to go through the full RTCFGC approach, right? And this is showing you how, depending on the level in which you're interacting with AI, you can just retrieve stuff or have it analyze stuff or synthesize. So I'm going to show you some of these recipes. So I actually don't do this, but it is what is recommended. OpenAI ChatGPT has its own format with different tags, not tags, JSON, JavaScript Object Notation, or JSON, but it's basically the same concept. Many of the AIs like that JSON. DeepSeek likes XML, which I found very reassuring or refreshing. And this shows you how you can phrase a question or present a problem to AI and some of the constraints, right? So it doesn't have to be very elaborate. Just, have them all there, step by step. And here's what I was talking about earlier. Draft your prompts before you get into an actual chat session. Write it in an actual document and work on it. And just you are wargaming it, right? You're wargaming how you're going to interact with the AI. And then you send the prompt, right? And you validate it, see how it works, and you get it to use chain of thought and reset for logical errors. But in some cases, depending on how far this is going, you might just want to start over, right? So if it's got to a point where you got a number of logical errors or errors in general, it's like, man, I need to go back to the drawing board before we go further, because you got two problems here. Not only is it going to double down on those errors, or the errors are going to contaminate the whole chat session, right? Accumulating error residue, but you're also going to accumulate more tokens that way too. You think you're trying to save some tokens? No, because if it keeps getting bad, you're going to have to start over anyway. You might as well cut your losses early while you still have enough capacity left in your AI plan, right? You might be on one of those plans and they say, oh, you used up so much of your capacity, we're going to have to reset you for 5 hours. Something like that, right? So this is kind of like a ballpark. 15 back and forths with the AI, or 6,000 words in the whole conversation, your words plus the AI words, is where it may start to degrade. Now, I don't know if it's talent or some insight. I was able to exceed that with DeepSeek using in the example I mentioned earlier. I'm not going to do that anymore because it was very exhausting it used, like we're saying, that AI is reflecting my mind. My mind was on overdrive in that particular session, and I went straight with it, hours, and got a good result. But anyway, so here's some more prompt templates, and I do use these. I just don't. I just don't use the brackets. I just type it out. Let me see. Let's see. So I'll just basically say roll like that, and then I'll say you are an esteemed professor of computer science. I was going to say nuclear physics, but we don't want to do that, right? Okay. Anyway, context. You're an esteemed professor of computer science, knowledgeable with deep knowledge of C sharp. Just have some fun. Context. There is an existing desktop program maintained over, and you just go into it, right? And so you do each of these like that. And so role, context, constraints, task, format, and goal, right? And this is kind of this should be down here, right? See, even the AI in making this document got it wrong. But anyway, so, but you want your role, your context, your task, your format, your goal, and then your constraints. And you put that there, and then, or these could be individual prompts, right? But it's actually more difficult to make these individual prompts than it is to have it as one single prompt. So these are some more. This is some more templates, right? This is going to be very important to have something like this. And you can try this if the conversation drifts or you start seeing errors, but I generally don't recommend that. I recommend just starting a whole new session, right? And multi-session project. Now, this is something I am digging into. And this is what when I do start up using AI more significantly, this is what I'm doing, multi-session project architecture. And it doesn't matter if you have like a Claude.md, a project.md, or whatever type of way you're interacting with the AI in terms of how you're setting up your agents, if you use agents, or other type of project structures, right? Because I do think using project structures rather than just chats is a better way to do it. Whether you're in the web browser and you're using Claude projects, ChatGPT projects, Gemini, Gems, I think. No, not Gems. Or you can use Notebook LM with Gemini. But whether you do it that way or you're doing it like on the computer using Cowork or Claude Code or ChatGPT Codex or Gemini CLI, whichever way you go about that, right? Having a multi-session project architecture is going to be very important for you to not run through the exhaustion of having to erect this or build all of this up over and over again, right? And so this will help with some level of efficiency, but also reuse and tuning, right? You just have to also be careful with this because you can end up with subtle contaminations if you have projects that have earlier artifacts that are no longer relevant to the current state of the project. So you're constantly pruning, or you should be pruning. And so so then that's I think that's pretty much it. The rest of this is going through some more ways to validate the quality of your output, and building a more predictive model. But I got something else that I want to mention before going on, right? And before concluding this. And here's some checklists that you can use. I do use these checklists. I use them intuitively, but I will start using them more explicitly. But yeah, it's all about unconscious competence, right? Where you're so masterful that it's just second nature to you, right? So these are the different levels of competence that we can move through, where we definitely can just kind of have some good luck, but the luck runs out, and then you kind of know that you're missing some things, and then you're like, oh, I finally got the right approach, but you got to think through it each time you engage until you reach the point where you don't have to think through it and you still come out doing it well, right? And so what is let's see let's see if there's any other major. Oh, and this is a way that if you wanted to quickly use AI, you could. I do use this too. I don't call it an emergency protocol, but anyway, it's 60-second prompt, right? I do this. You just got to remember RTCGC, right? Actually, RTCFGC, right? Just got to remember that, right? Or get it to where it's unconsciously competent, right? Where you have it automatically in mind. But what I want to conclude with is that one of the ways, and I said this in the previous video, I'm just going to repeat it here and maybe repeat it in a somewhat different way. So when we go back, right, let's go back to the actual framework, because I want to close with this because I believe it's very important. Let's cycle back. So what we got is, yep. So RTCFGC, right? So role, context, task, format, goal, and constraints. What's great about this approach is that it does give you a step-by-step building block for any prompt that you want to write. Step by step. That's what's really good about it. And it lines up with what many of the experts intuitively do, right? And so I highly recommend it for those that want to get more out of their use of AI. But there's another side to it. So first, this approach is very left-brained. It's a very left-brained approach, and it's a very structured step-by-step approach. So I had actually written notes about this, but I don't have my notes with me. But another way of doing this is you can keep this RTCFGC, but for a right-brained approach where it's more intuitive and more holistic, right? I know I seem to have talked against that earlier in the discussion, but let's look at it this way. Human beings often conduct our lives according to narratives. We often conduct our lives according to stories. And the most powerful way to engage each other is through stories. And so the AI is trained on that fundamental truth of human interaction, that of the narrative, that of the story. And to the extent that you can understand storytelling from the standpoint of a movie producer, a script writer, not your informal story. I'm not talking about the story over a campfire. I'm talking about actual storytelling approach used by creative writers, people who write creatively for TV, movie, videos, video games, you name it, corporate presentations. I have been able to identify intuitively that this role, context, task, format, goal, and constraints maps to human storytelling. As in, once upon a time, there was this great wizard who knew everything about magic and sorcery. And he lived on this land ruled by a great king who wanted more power to include the power of this wizard. And so this wizard had the task of finding out if he could protect and preserve his power from the great excesses of this great ruler. And one of the things that he wanted to come up with was this book, a book that had no less than 13 pages. And in these 13 pages, he was able to annotate in great succinct detail what the basic preservation and virtue of a real magician would be in all times. And when he did that, and he put that together, he found that he could now set out a goal to inform and guide other would-be magicians and those that have natural talent so that they are not found, located, or compromised by this overbearing ruler. But he had limitations that the great ones higher up in the reality forbade him to directly intervene in the affairs of the great king. And he was prohibited from directly telling people in the land what was going on. Okay, so that is kind of a narrative, right? And you can actually do it even better than what I just did. But it is those type of narratives, right, that if you were to say it in the right way, if you were to say it in the right way, with the right flow, with the right sequence, the AI would pick up on that. And it would be able to execute it in exactly the same way as you see here, and potentially in a much more comprehensive way, right? It's just that when I was coming up, we were trained on these arts. I don't know if people are trained on these arts anymore to that extent unless they go through some formal system to learn that. But I found that storytelling and narrative lines up with this in a way that was not immediately obvious when I went through this process. So I think I said it all. And this is my contribution to those that want to get more quality out of the AI, more quality, more detail, and have much more of a structure. And if you got questions about this content here, I will answer it. I'm still deciding if I'm going to publish something about this on my blog. If I do, then that publication will occur in April 2026. That publication would occur in April 2026 if I do decide to do that. And I will put it in the comment section of this video. I will put it in the comment section of this video so that it's easy to locate. But until then, and if then, I do plan to take some time away from this video production, this release of information by video, because I am working on some projects and I'm working on some knowledge, right? And I find that I like disclosing the information on this platform, but video takes more time than writing a blog article. So I have to manage my time much better here in the next couple of weeks so that I can hit certain deadlines that I've defined for myself. And until you see my next video and we have our next discussion, I will see you later on.